Hello, everyone, and welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. This is your extra show for the week. My name is Cammy Bell. I'm your host as always. And joining me on the mirth and merriment, which is following Glasgow Rangers FC at the moment, is Andy McGowan. Andy, thank you very much for coming on. I always enjoy having your dulcet tones cheer me up. So you may begin now.
It's just a pleasure to talk about Rangers just now. So it's the pleasure's all mine, Cammy, for coming on a show so we can wax lyrical about our football team. I can't wait.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I'm in the late stages of the flu, Andy. I might be close to death. That's how I feel at the moment. And I still trudged my arse up to Tannadice last night. And I'll be honest with you, it didn't make me feel any better when I was coming out the stadium watching what was a roller coaster of a performance, because in some periods of the game, Rangers were woeful, and in other periods of the game, they actually looked quite lively and came out their shell a wee bit. Um, it was like we were just talking before we started recording that if you were a neutral, probably a great game of football to watch. But there's so many hits that we've heard before for Rangers in terms of some of the mistakes that were made. And I'm keen to get your thoughts. Let's take them on the game as a whole, but I'm going to see where you are in terms of some of the players. And I think we start to bring the manager into the conversation now as well.
The game itself was low quality, but there was moments of, in inverted commas, excitement. We were equally infuriating, incompetent. Parts looked decent attacking wise, but this is a Rangers team. I said it the other week or the weekend. I think it was. You don't get moments of joy out of them. You just start to seethe because there's so many things and mistakes made and bad passes and wrong decisions, coupled with totally apparent weakness and lack of dig, and there's just so much with this team that just drives you to utter frustration to the point where you lose the plot with them. There's players that are well past their window of opportunity, and it's just now tiresome, and they need to go as soon as possible. There's no redemption for a few of them in my eyes. And you've got players in there that should be doing so much better that are not delivering. And, to give them maybe the benefit of the doubt, it could be what's around them. But, teams are made by the players that set the standard and pull the standard up and lead by example. And I think there's a wee bit of that missing just now. And I'm sure we can talk about the individuals involved. But and as for the manager, I'm going to come out strong on this. You can critique the manager, you can talk about substitutions, you can talk about some of his decision making, you can talk about the tactics he sets up with, you can talk about the whole thing. Far too early to go on the let's question the manager, because I don't think there's a manager alive could get a significant or a substantial enough tune out of these players just now. That's no getting roll a free pass, so don't mistake it for that. That's no me saying, we can't criticise again. Of course we can. But what I'm saying is just now that for a lot of the games that we've had under him, I'm like, well, has he got as much out of them as he can? Has he utilised everything at his disposal? Aye. And I don't know if folk will then say, aye, but Cameron and Curtis, I agree, he's not played them. He obviously doesn't fancy them that much. I don't think quality-wise they're that much better, but I do think that they would give us a wee bit more likelihood of a goal. So I don't think that's a particular stick to beat them with Cammy, the Curtis and Cameron thing. I'd prefer to see the two of them playing more often, far more often. But I don't think, I can't blame the guy for coming in and having a look at the squad and saying, right, what have I got to play with here? What formations have I got to play with? The problem is the squad quality. That's it. Nothing will change regardless of who we have in that dugout until we start to address the squad quality. And we have got major, I nearly swore there, Cammy, that was my first swear word of the day. We've got major problems about squad quality.
Yeah, that's true. And I agree with you to an extent on the manager. And before anyone listening thinks I'm saying, right, well, we need a change and blah, blah, you've said the same thing I have, I think, in previous shows. It's far too early. The manager needs wholesale change, and it's borderline lunacy to say that he should be going out the door before he even gets his first opportunity to be able to do that. He has been handed an incredibly shit hand in terms of where this squad are currently at the moment. There are definite questions around his selections, and I've seen people criticise him for the whole, well, you're bringing Chermiti on when you're hoping to get something out the game. You've got, I think there was like 15 minutes left when you're chasing a 2-1 loss. But what else is he likely to do at that point? Because I wouldn't want him. I do want Finlay Curtis to play, but I wouldn't be bringing Finlay Curtis on in that situation because I feel like that's too high a pressure situation to be able to bring him into. Does that make sense?
Aye, but so I would I know what you're saying, right? I'd challenge MD that comes at me with that about, especially about selection, squad selection. What would you do differently? So we're talking about Fernandes and Giga not being good at centre half. Who do we play? Enciala? Because you've seen him last year. He's decent on the ball, comfortable. He's not a defender. He wasn't up to scratch last season. Who do you take? Tavernier put in the middle? Perhaps play Aarons on the right? Perhaps. I don't think there's that much. It's fiddling around the edges, that kind of stuff, and it's not going to make a hugely material impact on the outcomes of games because our biggest single issue, so I'm going to say biggest single issue, we've got two issues and they're pretty bloody big. The defence, obviously, right, but that's more individual errors. But we, up to last night, have had a major problem creating real chances. The old XG, which, I'm an old school, but I agree. Adam Thornton used the phrase, you can't outrun it. You can't outrun it. And last night it was really good. We're just going to take chances. So that was a positive, as Roll said. But I don't know what he does different. What can he do differently? And bring on Chermiti. Who else? We've no goal strikers. And at some point you've got to hope and pray that this guy gets a break or something and builds a wee bit of confidence because it's you've got Danilo Majovski, you've got Chermiti, and the three of them are making me sorry for the stick I gave Dessers because Dessers is like fucking Romario compared to the three of them. But that's no, that's a reflection on recruitment. We're getting into other territory here, but I really don't know what the manager can do that much different. You put Pep Guardiola or Klopp or MD in that dugout, what are they going to do differently? They might affect the mentality a wee bit because they can look over and see who's in the dugout. But I don't think that alone changes the fabric of what we're watching. Gerrard, I don't think we'd be getting much more out of this.
No, I don't think you would either. And I think we all know that that's what the problem is. I think that when people are talking, and I'm kind of in that camp where, I suppose really what I'm thinking about is when you look at, let's say those three key areas, right, that we've just spoken about there. So defence, midfield, and forward, right? You've potentially got Enciala, potentially got Cameron, and potentially got Curtis. And from that perspective, it feels a lot to me like he doesn't fancy them, right? I think that's becoming obvious.
I think it's
but
clear, especially Cameron.
There's an interwoven thing that I think that we do as a support where because we don't like A, we want B. And because of that, and I call this, so it's the Katic effect, right? Where B becomes better through his absence. And all of a sudden, it's a case of, well, I don't think he would have been that bad. Now, I personally like Enciala. I've went on record before. I think that there is a player in there. I know he had mistakes towards the second half of last season, but still young, developing, blah, blah. And listen, if we were being as cutthroat with our players in terms of making mistakes, Christ, we'd be putting out the under-13s team. However, there also has to come a point where these guys are watching what's been played ahead of them. And they must be thinking, what the hell have I got to do here to be able to try and get back in this team? So at the moment just now, I trust Danny Rule, right? I absolutely trust him in terms of making what selection he feels is correct. But you understand, I think, the conversations which are happening to say, and it's probably been interesting when you see Bijrami coming back into the team, a guy who was actively getting pushed out of Rangers in the summer. And he's come back in, and for me, I think he's done well. Obviously did well with the penalty last night. By no means a finished article, but at the same point, he's come out the cold and he's been able to deliver. And I think some of the support feel, well, if it can happen for him, can it not happen for the three guys that we've just been talking about?
I'll tell you why it can't, because Bajrami's got the ability. It was application and the execution that he wasn't bringing to the table. So whenever you watch Bajrami, you can see he's technically good and he can deliver moments of brilliance and he can unpick defences. I thought last night was his best game in the Rangers jersey, right? This is 16 months he's been here, so he needs to bring that time and time again, week in, week out. Whereas the likes of Nsiala, I kind of agree with you. I thought there's a player there, but he's fatally flawed. He would get taken a loan of in the Scottish League because he's not good enough in the air, and you cannot be a centre half in our league because games like last night, in real ferocious away grounds where you're having to defend corners and there'll be a tendency to put balls over the top. I don't think he can handle it. I think NCL is a non-starter for Rangers as a career, right? That's where I'm at with him. Might come in, do a wee job here or there for us in the meantime, but he needs to go. Curtis, I really like. His goals have got him the kudos and the reputation that he's got so far. But I don't think, when I was hearing about, he should be playing before Moore, I was like, no, he's got a lot of things to learn. But I do think he's somebody that could be contributing off the bench because he has proven that he's got an eye for goal. And Cameron, I really like Cameron, and a lot of things we've been talking about as a support in terms of what's missing for this team, this squad, which I don't know how to describe it, but that kind of stereotypical Scottish element where you've got players that know what it's about and they can deal with the physicality and all the rest of it. He could be doing something for us because I really liked him when he's had his wee cameos for us, and he was one of the bright lights from the debacle that was the Martin era. So I really do think he has been underutilised, and I do think he offers more than Asgard, for example. So I know that takes you back to your Cottage effect theory, but I think genuinely Cameron could be doing a job for us in the middle of the park, a wee bit wider right and behind the strikers. So that is the only real thing that I've got a problem with Raoul just now, is that he's not utilising him, whereas he's persevering with Asgard, who I think there's a player there, but again, he is just struggling so badly to adapt to being a Rangers player and the expectation that comes with that in that position he plays. So this is why I'm coming out strong, and I know there'll be listeners sitting saying, but that's Andy and his decisions and his substitution and the rest of it. I really think that we will reap what we sow if we don't screw the nut in terms of realising and being adult and mature enough to say we've got a major problem with our squad, and the manager, whilst really, really important match to match, we need to make sure that we get some continuity, and you need to give him a chance. You need to do. My biggest fear is, Cammy, we've got rid of Thelwell and we've got rid of Stewart, right? Right decision, and I'm glad they ripped the plaster off because I really did not believe that they were going anywhere. I thought after that round table I attended that they were going to be protected by Kavanagh. And you're now going into a January window, which is colossal for us in terms of how we finish the second half of the season. And we have learned from the past in terms of the Beale scenario. I was the one that used to say, no, Ross Wilson isn't as bad as everybody makes out, and just be careful that you're sometimes better having a sporting director of any note than no sporting director. And it was, I'm not saying it was borne out, but listen, Beale got the keys to the kingdom and they made his signings, and we're still paying a price for it here. So when we're going into a January window, I'm not saying I wish Thelwell was still here because any sporting director is better than no sporting director. What I'm worried about is that players that come in are deemed to be Danny Rule signings. And if they don't show up rapid, which is a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to do at Rangers at any time, and a good Rangers team. It's an even harder thing to do when we're behind the 8 ball and the fans are baying for blood and everything else. It's a hard thing to do. I don't want that to become the next stick that he's beaten with, which is, that's his signings. We've no choice. We need to get new players in. We need to take good judgment, and you need to listen to the Fitbit department. And the Fitbit department just now, as far as I can see, is the remnants of the Thelwell structure and Danny Rule. So we need to see ourselves out to the end of the season. We need to give this guy breathing space. If we don't, and we'll reap what we sow. And it may be the right thing to do, and it may be the wrong thing to do, but there comes a point where you've actually got to say, right, is it worth, criticising the guy out the door? See, right now, nowhere near it. He cannot be judged on this shower of shite that we've got in front of us week in, week out. And last night, I was kind of heartened by the aggressive nature of Gassama and Barami. And I can live with that. They don't need to be the perfect, they don't need to be the finished article. But if they're doing what I want to be seeing them doing, which is running at fullbacks, creating stuff, causing problems, that'll do for me. The problem is that with nobody to take them, Danilo and Majowski were abject. They're very, very weak. No pace, no power. Majowski's, I didn't fancy him to start with, Cammy, I've got to be honest, but he's been even worse than I expected. There's no much there at all. And you can't get a goal from midfield. Raskin's been honking, and attacking wise, he's hit or miss. Barron, very, very tidy. I like him defensively. I think he's got a good future ahead of him, but you couldn't score. He couldn't score. Right? You seen him last night with that chance. He should have burst in it, and it was high and wide. So where's the goals come from? Set pieces, and maybe the two wingers cutting in or something like that. We've got a major problem not even finishing teams, scoring the opening goals and getting the fans on side and then take it from there. We dream of going 2-3 goals up early in a game. It's just not a thing that's happened. It was the last time it happened, Cammy.
I think there's a direct connection between what we've seen in the last two games. So we were 15,000 shy at Ibrox at the weekend. And typically whenever I've been up at Tannadice, I think spare tickets are very scarce. I had 2 spare tickets with me. There was plenty going around, and even that's before you get into online and message groups and stuff as well, where there was lots to be able to go. And the thing is, though, that it's because I don't believe anyone right now feels a degree of connection with this team, because even a core nucleus of players who you could turn around and go, listen, that guy's really trying. He's looking to be able to try and get the rest of the team elevated. I just don't think it exists. So even that glimmer of hope to say, well, we've got a couple of boys in there, hopefully they can try and raise standards. And now we're, as you say, we're behind the 8 ball, but we need to pull an ace out of our pocket, or several aces out of our pocket actually in the January window, to be able to lift this squad, to excite the fans, to make the fans feel like it's not a habit or a chore any longer, to actually look forward to be able to go. And I think, and I'm not going to sit here for a minute to say, given the way how Rangers are playing at the moment, that I demand to be entertained. Right now, all I care about is 3 points. That is it. That is all I care about right now. It can be the dullest game I've ever seen in my entire life, but as long as we win it, I don't care. Entertainment is a distant second. But I think last night, Andy, we saw a lot of the greatest hits, and that was, as you mentioned there, a big empty space where a midfield should be. Lackluster in front of goal, just failing to be able to try and take chances. And Dundee United took what I thought was quite a, I thought it was a very good goal by Satso. He skins Fernandes down our left-hand side. A lovely wee dink over Butland. Dundee United are 1-0 up. Dundee United, I don't think, had created too many chances, but I'm also repeating the same old story of they don't have to create too many chances because they know that we won't create many chances either. But after that goal was scored, all of a sudden Rangers did get an uplift. And I thought for the next 25 minutes after the goal went in, we were good value for it. And then you've got Magoma's finish, which was an absolute peach from about 30 yards out, just an absolute fizzer that goes in towards the keeper's bottom left-hand corner. But it's always funny because, this almost reminds me of what it used to be like in the 90s. And teams would take the lead against us, but we never panicked because we knew that we would win 2-1, 3-1, 4-1 or whatever, because we knew we had enough quality to be able to overcome it. And so you can take a jab and you might get a wee bloody nose or whatever, but it doesn't matter because you'll still get the knockout. This Rangers team doesn't have enough fight in it to be able to muster that. And I dislike this idea of these players lacking that urgency from the first whistle, because that is what the fans want. And I now believe wholeheartedly these players are not capable of delivering that.
So against Falkirk, that was the first time. I very rarely question commitment and digging an application. Falkirk was the first game I was like, nah, there's people actually starting to hide out there. Last night, I thought that sleeping on it, maybe no this time last night when I watched the game, but sleeping on it, I was, I think we dug in, and it does count for something when you are getting beat in the last minute's injury time and you actually make something happen. That doesn't happen by accident. So there was something there. The problem, the bottom line, to take you back to what you were saying about the 90s, is if you've got quality that you can count on, you've got a couple of match winners in your squad, whether that be on the bench or on the park, that's what gives you the belief, because you can then say, right, no, lift us up when you go do your stuff. Celtic have had that for the best part of the, certainly since Postecoglou came. That Kyogo was one of the players. You could count on him to actually make a difference here or there. Maeda is it for him just now. We've no got anybody like that just now at all. And you couldn't point your finger at somebody that you would say, right, well, they could be that. That's what the dearth of overt talent is in your squad. So that's a major problem, and this is why Chermiti is a major problem, because the money we spent on him should have been spent on two of those types of players that I'm talking about, and we'd be in a far better position. I asked the question at that round table, not to go on about the round table, but I asked a direct question of Thelwell and Kavanagh, and I says, well, why spend that on a Chermiti and not a Cherny, where you know that you've got goals and assists almost guaranteed? And they gave me a kind of story about, value at the end of contract and all this nonsense. That's the problem this season. We've spent money in a lot of the deficiencies, a lot of the players that need a wee bit of breathing space to acclimatise to becoming Rangers players. That breathing space could have been given to them by having a couple of players that were senior and ready and delivering. And I use Cherny as an example, but he came in last year and instantly became a senior player and a responsible player and a player that created and took it on his shoulders to win his games and create things, right? We've nobody like that just now. Bajrami did it last night because, as I say, he was hungry for the ball. He was direct. He wasn't, passing it back. He was taking chances with passes that he wouldn't normally do. He's having some lovely clipped, curved balls into the box and stuff like that. But it's no been apparent this season. We've not had anybody that will lift us above the humdrum. Asgard should have been one of them. He's no go there. Tav's done it in the past. He's obviously fading a bit and his role's changing. He's not quite the same as he was. And then you've got likes of Danilo. He should be, he's a £6 million striker that we've signed. He should be one of these people we're talking about. And he's just, he's an enigma. He's a futsal player. Bigisama, I like him. I really like him. His final ball, his final decision making is erratic. But I do like the fact that I've not got a problem with any winger at Rangers if they take responsibility and do what they're asked to do, which is take people on, create havoc, and try and create. You're willing to always do it, but that's your job. Don't turn back and pass it into the fullback. That's the cardinal sin for me. And Gassama and Barami last night done what I like to see. So that's where we're at. And my final kind of point on the players, and it's not really a defence so much, but it is a consideration. Asgard, who else have we got? Miovski to a degree, Chermiti, I think, Aarons. They, in an alternative parallel universe, could be quite good for us. I think the Martin experience has shattered a lot of the players and in turn shattered the confidence of the squad, and they're slowly getting back into something resembling a degree of confidence that's enough. Aarons is getting better. I know he's not the answer and we could send him back in Christmas, but he's been better and he's shown determination and grit, and that's more than he was shown before, right? So I think there's a lot of factors that have brought us to this place. It's not just about last night. The Martin factor's a disaster. It's completely killed our club, and the recruitment has been a disaster, and it's been more of a disaster because of Martin. And now we're trying to recover ground, but see Raskin and Diamandi, they're senior players now. They've been at Rangers long enough to be people that we say, right, you're actually our senior players now. You need to step up. You need to do what you need to do. Raskin's been found wanting this year. I've been really, really disappointed with him. And Diamandi is boiling my piss, to be quite honest with you, because he's not really learning things. He's kind of doing the same stuff he did when he came in. We're like, he's raw, he'll learn. I've seen him against Bilbao, I've seen him against Celtic being outstanding. You can count those performances in one hand. He needs to start bringing it. He needs to start contributing. He needs to start scoring a few goals for the outside the box or in the box. It's not enough. But then I say to myself, Cammy, is that because the whole squad's struggling and I'm expecting too much? I don't know.
But playing a bit of devil's dick advocate, why should he? Because he's going to start and he knows he's going to play. So he knows he's going to get selected. And I'm not saying, and I know that you're not saying this either, that he's deliberately choosing to underperform, or any of them are deliberately choosing to underperform. I just don't think that they have an emphasis to do the upturn. The Martin thing I think is interesting because the only slight pushback I would have against any of that was I can understand it to a degree, and we've all worked, right? Especially if you've worked in shit cultures where you've got a poor manager who, just creates this environment where, they'll jump in your head for a great height if you make a mistake and all the rest of it. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that that's what Russell Martin did, but what I'm saying is that he went too personal too quick. I think he lost a lot of the squad, even during the Raskin debacle. And I said at the time, I don't necessarily think all of that is Russell Martin's fault, by the way, but it's where we are at the moment. And I seriously hoped that with Martin's departure, that culture would have changed and they would have got a bit of a breath of fresh air. And it hasn't changed anything from what you can see from the players' attitudes. There's players within that squad who, like I say, I think they know they're going to play regardless. So no one fears for his position. And you can have all the work ethic in the world and the ambition and everything else that you want to be able to do. But if you know that you're going to operate in a fairly safe space, effort levels will start to decrease. And what's stunning to me is that when you see this and you see fans voting with their feet, because we are, and people not enjoying what they're coming along to watch, I don't think you've got anywhere near the license to be able to make that decision. And that's what it feels like to now, is that these players will take it to a certain point, but they won't go above it. And I struggle to believe that if Raskin's position in his national team was in doubt, that you wouldn't be seeing more from him. I genuinely believe that. But now he knows that he's played well for Belgium, shying anything spectacular happening. He's going to the World Cup next year. So what does he do at this point? Well, I can put in some of the basics. I can make a simple pass, or I can do something, but I won't do anything above and beyond. Like I won't play that risky ball that flies in that face of let's do the risk reward, and being, almost averse to being able to take any kind of real purposeful penetrative pass because I could lose the ball. Well, we're losing the ball anyway, so what difference does it make? And I think the point I want to kind of touch on with that as well, it was probably summed up perfectly with the Dundee United second goal. Now, I know that we'll always look at it from our optic because that's what we do, right? And it was an excellent goal. Genuinely, it was an excellent goal. It was a great finish. The problem I've got, though, is that there's at least 3 or 4 chances for Rangers to be able to clear that ball. Nobody wants to commit to the tackle. We're very easy to get away from, either using physicality to be able to create space or just being caught in our heels where we're too slow to be able to put in a challenge or a block. And we do this thing so consistently, Andy, which is we will always amplify the opposition's capability. We will make teams playing against us look better than they actually are. And when you cannot clear your lines, or your feet just to get the ball up the park and just reset and get yourselves organised, it just smacks volumes of a team full of players who are saying, I don't want to be the guy that has the last touch in this ball that leads to the opposition scoring against us. And it's so weak, not only in terms of mentality, but we can't deal with the physicality of other teams against us at the moment. And that Dundee United goal, I think, for me, their second one, just a great example of where we're too slow to come out. We don't know what to do with the ball when we're in a crisis situation. And if we're close quarters, it's right, let's just play some tippy-tappy. It's pathetic.
I mean, I'm saying I don't want to isolate him, but I will isolate him. I thought Danilo was a disgrace in the lead up to that goal. And but then there's more, as you say, and it's a symptom of the weakness and the lack of physicality, which is something I've been going about for God, as long as this podcast has been going on. It's innate defensive instincts that are lacking in our defenders, which is a problem, right? And Giga and Fernandes, we could have a podcast about the two together, right? But it's part of it. We don't defend with our life. We don't have a defensive mindset, if that makes sense. We're too quick to think to play football, and that guy should have been up in the air or whatever. It just shouldn't have gone to that. It's a good point, a good goal for their point of view, bad goal for your point of view, right? Infuriating. So I said earlier on, infuriating. That was a moment that was infuriating because it shouldn't have happened, and it wasn't like it was a moment of absolute brilliance you couldn't do anything about. And it's things like that burn any last vestige of goodwill that you might have with some players. So I know Danilo's getting it off me here, but it happens every other week with a different player where you're like, that's just not acceptable. In the moment, whatever they've just done is not acceptable, and they should be better than it. But I don't think many of them are. I think that's a level. Danilo isn't going to suddenly become great in that regard. So he needs to offset it by being really good in the regard of his attacking play, but we're not getting that off him. So there's no offset. I can live with players that deliver something and they're weaker at others. That's the nature of football, and it's the nature of our level as well, and who we have the ability to sign. They're not going to be perfect, so you're going to have to offset what they can do with what they can't do. But we're getting nothing off so many of them. So, yeah, the football last night was sometimes really, really good, fast, breaking through lines. I thought Dundee United suited us, got to say, right? They didn't sit back and play 10 men behind the ball. They were at home, and credit to them, they actually came out. And I suspected that might be the case before the game. I hoped that would be the case before the game. But our inability to defend is hurting us just now. And you could say the inability to defend, is it because of Giga, first and foremost, or Giga and Fernandes? Possibly the fact that McGowan is a wee bit slight. I like McGowan. I think he's got great ability. I think he's a great attacking wing back. He's just a wee bit too slight for me in terms of Scottish football, but I think he's still in a good Rangers team. He'd be a good player. But we need to get it's a big Sterling, and this isn't he's been out for ages, so he becomes brilliant. I've always rated Sterling, just can't stay fit, and I think he's one of our best centre halves. Believe it or not, when he comes back, I really like him at centre half as opposed to right back. That might be a shock to some folk, but I think that's his best position for us is centre half. I'd like to see him get bled back in because we need him. And Giga is a major problem because, all right, it wasn't disastrous last night, and he has moments where he's good in the ball and he can build for the back, but he's always got that massive error. Or he gives the wee pass that allows teams to get a wee bit of impetus or gets their crowd up. It's criminal, that kind of stuff. Give them nothing, and he can't do that. He plays on the edge, but not the good edge. It's mistakes.
Giga's one of these guys that, see if I was a centre forward, I'd absolutely be running at him all day.
He'd love it.
I'd absolutely be running at him all day.
And Fernandes, I'm going to defend, by the way. I thought he was absolutely atrocious at the goal. But I do think he's got attributes. And I go back to the fact that A, he's relatively young, B, he's came from a league that's probably comparable to 80% of our teams we play, right? And I think he's got attributes. I think he's decent at the air. I think normally he's strong enough. I think he's really, really good on the ball, actually. And that goal was a major learning curve, right? What I would say to his critics that write him off straight away, because I'm not writing him off at all. I would like to see him play with a really good centre half. And I'm saying, like, for talk's sake, sit him next to prime Davy Weir. Do you think he would be good? I think he would be good. And therefore, he's one of these players I'm talking about, Cammy, that's suffering from the overall shit show that we're in, because he's one of the players that we should be able to... This is where Celtic have scored when players have come through. They've given them time to... There's not been a necessity for them to be amazing straight away, because they've got a squad that functions, and they've had players that can see them through games and win games. And then you're winning games, as we all know, he really cares about anything else. Win games, and he would be allowed to have breathing space to develop as a Rangers player, because it's no easy. But what we've got is a situation just now where he's thrown in with no other centre half really apart from Enciala, and he's got that Giga beside him, and you know he needs to go back in the window. Giga needs to be the one that we say, actually, here's our standards. He's going back, and we bring in somebody else, whether it's another loan or whatever. We need to get somebody that can defend first and foremost. So I'm jumping about here, but there's elements to what's going on just now that we need to be careful that we have a wee bit of balance, because you've got to, you can't get rid of everybody. So what I'm saying is basically, you know, like Danilo, seen enough. Nothing's going to change there. Miovski could find form, don't think so, but he might. He's only just signed. Wigisama, I think, will be absolutely fine for us over time. Barami needs to do what he done last night all the time, or most of the time, because if he doesn't, it's no use to us. And then you need your senior players like Raskin and Diamandi to actually pick up. And the one guy that I would give a massive pat in the back to is Connor Barron. I know he's not everybody's cup of tea, but I don't really know what folk are expecting from him. His job is that kind of specialist role, and I think he's been really, really good. I thought he was really good away back against Celtic. I thought he's been really nice and tidy, and has been one of the players that I've looked at that's actually had a bit of zip about them, whereas so many have been flat and feared and, you know, knocking the ball back. Barron has been one that I think has been really, really positive, and he's a guy that probably is developing into a Rangers player, and we've got to remember that a lot of these players are developing into, or could be developing into, Rangers players. But I just wish to hell we could get some results to allow that to happen faster. And January will help, because I think we need to get senior players in that. And you know, if we get 2 or 3 players in the rank side of 30, I think that's probably what we're needing. Some old heads that can come in, and I've seen it all and done it all, and can live with it. Difficult today. I'm really worried about January, because I think it's a really big expectation on all us. We're talking about it as if it's some kind of potential panacea. It's a really difficult market, and it's only going to be as good as who we put out as well. We need to get rid of some of these players.
Yeah, there's 3 other points to note that I just want to get your thoughts on as well. The main one for me was the Chermiti miss. And I don't want to kind of replay it too much, but I just want to emphasise the point that you made earlier on, which I completely agree with. I think I've said the same as well. But that miss is horrendous. I genuinely don't know as to how Thelwell is not up in charges for signing this guy. But the irony being is that I don't think any one of our 3 strikers would have finished that. I genuinely don't. That's not one of those chances where you're saying, "Oh, I wish it fell to such and such."
Danilo would have, because he's no bad in the air actually for his stature. But I mean, it'd be debatable.
Debatable is about right, because I do not think he would have. But and the other 2 things I want to call out are the 2 penalty incidents. And the only reason why really I'm doing this, Andy, is because obviously I was at the game, which saved my ears from bleeding from listening from Michael Stewart, because all the commentary that I've heard is that Michael Stewart was abysmal on Premier Sports coverage last night. The Fernandes handball is not a handball. He's deliberately trying to move his arm out of the way of the flight of the ball, so I don't really see as to why there's any controversy there. And our penalty, despite what Michael Stewart thinks, and I would love to sit with Michael Stewart and just talk about how he understands the game of football is governed, because I don't think he understands the laws of the game. But you know, he's getting paid to do a job, and yeah, as I say, if he wants to be some sort of diet Chris Sutton, then fair enough. But it's a penalty. Aarons gets in ahead of him. It's a clumsy challenge from the Dundee United player, but it's a penalty. And again, I don't really kind of see how there's been any kind of real degree of controversy about it.
I'll come to Chermiti first, Cammy, if that's all right. That miss isn't his first like that. Every chance he's had in the 6-yard box as a Rangers player, he's blew it. That's a worry. That's a big, big worry. You could say, oh, well, he's getting in the positions and it'll come. I really hope that's the case. But last night was one of the ones where, watching it at telly, I wasn't at the game, but watching it at telly, you could see after it he was shell-shocked, and he knew the magnitude of that miss and what it meant, because that's the that's the ones that can make or break a career. He dives there and scores a brilliant diving header, then all of a sudden folk have belief in his belief in sale, and it changes the narrative. Whereas the narrative now is, quite rightly, this guy is murder. And we can't afford him to be murder because we've no other option just now. So we need to make sure, we need to have him as an option, either starting or on the bench. Can't keep playing Miovski every week or Danilo. We know they're not robust enough for it. I was a big blow to see that, because you could see in his face that he's like, Jesus, that's bad. He was shell-shocked after it. And I'm just going to say something, right? And it's no kick a Rangers player day, but Miovski had one in the first half. It was not quite as bad, but I think it was Bid Ramy kind of done one of these ones where he cuts in and then kind of does a bend ball, kind of in-swinger into the box. And it was on a play, and all Miovski needed to do was make a decent contact of any sort, and it's in the net. He didn't make contact. So let's not just isolate Chermiti. Miovski's supposed to be the proven SPL goal scorer, and he's actually been meant to be the one that's meant to take the pressure off Chermiti. That's what's meant to happen. He's meant to be the mainstay, and it allows Chermiti to breathe. To get back to my former point about senior players allowing newer or younger players to breathe and develop. So it's not just about Chermiti, but we've got a major problem at centre forward every week. Every week we're and to be funny, or try to be funny, it's no funny. If you watch the shooting drills before the games, none of this will be a surprise to you. Every week I watch them and I'm like, Jesus Christ. And then on the penalties, Cammy, the first one with Fernandez, he's pulling his phone away for it, and it's effectively in a natural position. So he's not moving his hand towards the ball, he's moving it away from the ball, and it's by his side. It's never a penalty, right? And if it's against us, would I shout for it? Aye, but I wouldn't be expecting it because I'm not an idiot. And the penalty we did get, it's knee high at a guy who's running fast across the penalty box, and he's hit his knee. Of course it's a penalty. There's no way in no league in the world, even our brutal league, that's not a penalty. And Michael Stewart is just, he's got this thing in him where I don't know what it is, right? I've got a wee bit in myself, you might recognise this, Cammy. The wee bit of contrarianism, what's the word? Contrarianism, where you try to differentiate yourself and maybe say, look how clever I am, because actually look at it from this angle, or think about it like this. He does it every single penalty decision in the history of Scottish game. If you listen to Radio Scotland, if you go back, remember biomechanics for Jermaine Defoe's penalty, remember that one? He just talks shit and he just wants to become contrary, because I don't know if it's a deliberate ploy for, to get his name trending, but it's tiresome now, and it's actually an insult to people watching, because it's no insight. It's no insight at all. It's the opposite insight. Every single week he'll say something on a big decision, and then on the Monday or whatever, somebody of authority or somebody with actual credentials will come out and say the exact opposite of him. You think at some point he'd maybe stop and say, you know what, maybe I need to just rein it in a wee bit. I think he reined it in last night, because I think he thinks he's stretching it a bit. It was disgraceful. I'm saying disgraceful. It's laughable, actually. It's not that serious. He's just a joke.
Yeah, I get that. But like I say, he'll never change, and it's just who he is. And unfortunately, Scottish broadcasters here seem to think that as if he's got something of value to say. So
he's never off a telly.
I know.
Friday night, Airdrie playing County Beath, and he's commentating.
He's very available, is probably the best way I could put that. So yeah, so we will see. I wish our centre halves were as available as he is. Right, well, just before we wrap up, Andy, quick look towards the weekend. Rangers take on Kilmarnock in a really stupid 8 p.m. kickoff down at Rugby Park. It's going to be an interesting weekend because obviously Celtic take on Hearts. I kind of found myself last because I was watching, the scores as I was at Tannadice, and just saying, hopefully Hearts can keep it going, because now I'm at the stage where I want Hearts to be able to try and continue their momentum, but it's fallen off a cliff. A last-minute equaliser against Kelly more or less sealed that. Celtic have brought in a new manager, so we just have to let them get on with whatever they're doing. But ultimately, we can only get back on the horse. And Kilmarnock's going to be a tough game. we know the shit pitch and all the rest of it and stuff as well. I will go apoplectic if we drop points on Saturday night, and if a player or the manager or anyone comes out and says, "Oh yeah, the pitch is a factor," we're beyond those excuses now, and there's enough of them that have played in it. So we now need to look at making sure that we can right what happened at Tannadice and get 3 points on Saturday night. We need to be able to try and keep some degree of momentum going towards the January window. Otherwise, it'll be dead in the water regardless.
I think if we play like we did last night, and I know it wasn't perfect, I think if we play with intensity and the aggression going forward, right? We're much better getting the ball moving forward last night as opposed to the interminable passes backwards that we saw against Falkirk. If we do what we did last night in that attacking regard, I think we'll be absolutely fine, because you just cannot go game after game with that kind of level of XG and no win a game. Kilmarnock have been struggling for form. I was surprised to actually see that they got the point last night, but fair play to them. So they'll have a wee bit of belief more than they probably would have if they'd been beaten. We've got to win it. These are winnable games. There's no excuses. The pitch is the pitch, but as you say, Cammy, it's just something you've got to deal with. Years going by, it would have been a heavier pitch or whatever. So you just need to deal with it. It's all about mentality, desire, and actually stepping up. And we need players to step up. This is it. So as much as we can say they're no use and they should be going, they're here, they're getting paid, they're representing Rangers. You've got thousands of fans travelling from all over the place and paying decent money to come and watch them. They need to step up, and they need to start building some serious momentum. You know, with 4 games where we won, but there was no momentum in terms of performance. That's a definite. We can see that now. We need to start delivering some momentum as we get into a really, really crucial period. It's been a bad place to go. You kind of get a mental scars from Rugby Park, because we've had so many bad memories in recent years from really, really poor performances. We need to start erasing that. We need to start going to these grounds and actually getting them re-scuddings and actually building up the mentality again, not just in the pitch but in the stands as well. Rangers fans need this.
Yep, I agree. I think it would be nice for us to be able to put out a decent result, and as you quite rightly pointed out earlier on, being able to go and win with a good solid margin would be absolutely lovely. So it's over to Rangers. Assuming I survive until the weekend, I will look forward to seeing what's going to happen there as well. But that will do us for this week. David will be back with you on Flagship on Monday to unpack the Killie game, and I will be back with you next week. Andy, thank you so much for coming on. I know it's always tough to come on and talk about these kind of things as well, but I've loved hearing your input and the fact that you think that Yusuf Chermiti will score 25 goals in the second half of the season.
Listen, I just like to thank everybody for letting me rant for how long's that, 50 minutes, because I've not been on for a while and it's probably been building up. Poor Cammy, having to listen to that. What was my longest diatribe there? It was a good 5 minutes anyway, wasn't it?
It's fine. I'll cut it out and edit. The whole pod will be about 12 minutes. But listen, let's not kid ourselves. Everybody loves listening to Big McGowan, so you're always welcome to come on here and rant. And as I say, it's what we need to do at the moment, because things are not rosy. So that's just the way how it goes,
Well, thoughts and prayers with you, Cammy, with your flu. I'll look after Melissa and stuff like that if anything was to go wrong.
Thank you, mate. Thank you. I'll let her know. She'll probably take you up on that offer whether I survive or not anyway, to be honest. But yeah, so now you've landed yourself in trouble. Thank you to Mike Lee and Paul Myers. Thank you to you all for listening. If you want to hear more from us, head on over to our Patreon site, patreon.com/Heart and Hand, and David will be back with you on Monday. Have a great weekend, folks. I hope that Rangers help make it a great weekend for you, and we'll speak to you next week. Bye-bye.